I thought I would look at a couple of poems by myself this time. Again, I choose two that have received some praise from different quarters. They are very, very different poems. The first one was written a long, long time ago, more than 20 years, and it's a sonnet. So it's not easy to write sonnets in this day and age. It's never easy to write sonnets from a technical point of view. It's a challenge, but the question might be asked if it's even possible to seriously write a sonnet in the modern age. After T.S. Eliot, after Ezra Pound, they never wrote sonnets. If they did, if they had done, they would have given it some smart new twist, probably, but they didn't think it was even possible, I expect. Yeah, it's a very structured form in an age which is not particularly structured. So today's world is nothing like the world of Shakespeare or Petrarch or Dante or the classical sonneteers. So how can we write sonnets that talk about mostly about love in a very structured kind of way? Well, people do try, and I have tried as well. And sometimes there can be some success. I would cite Anthem for Doomed Youth by Wilfred Owen. It was maybe a long time ago now, more than 100 years, but that's an example of a good modern, in inverted commas, sonnet, where he has appropriated the meaning of the sonnet for himself, for his own purposes. So usually it's about love, but it certainly isn't in the case of Anthem for Doomed Youth. So sonnets can also talk about other things, and that might be one direction poets can take. Move away from the traditional themes of sonnets and use them to talk about modern issues. It's a moot point, really, whether sonnets can be written on a regular basis in the modern world, but it's inevitable that poets will occasionally try one, and some in the modern world are written in the modern world are more successful than others. I tried many sonnets and most of them didn't work at all. I felt that this one did work. That's the writer speaking, and the opinion of other people is always more valuable than the person who wrote it, although the person who wrote it knows many things that interpreters don't. Anyway, perhaps I should just read the sonnet first. I keep saying it's a sonnet, but strictly speaking it isn't, because a sonnet has to have 14 lines, and this one only has 13 lines. The reason for that is I lost the original, and I had to reconstruct the poem by memory, through memory, and I thought I had done a good job and completely remembered it, and it seemed to work fine when I read it through. However, checking later, I found there were only 13 lines there, so somehow something had been omitted, and yet the omission didn't really seem to make any difference. The poem still worked, I thought. So rather than bother about one line, I thought, well, just let it be. If it's not a sonnet, then don't have to worry about the problems of writing sonnets in the modern age. But it is effectively a sonnet, and it's constructed as a sonnet. So, having said that, just let me read it, and I will come back to the point about the 13 lines later. It's called Travelling Through the Sunlit Cyclades. Travelling through the sunlit Cyclades, I thought about romances from the past, of mighty Ulysses strapped to the mast, of siren lovers, Priam on his knees, cursing Paris for that strange and vast emotion men call love. One only sees that certain things were sure from first to last. What is it in a single woman's eyes, or nose, or mouth, or lips, or snow-white breast, that make men lose their reason, and at once begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs that put love to the test, until the world itself has no defense. Okay, so it's written as a sonnet then. I think it reads as a sonnet, and most people would recognize it as a sonnet. However, a sonnet has an octave and a sestet. The octave is the first 8 lines, the sestet is the last 6 lines. So here the octave is actually 7 lines and not 8 lines. So somewhere a line has been lost in my memory when I transcribed the poem. I think it was okay as a 14-line poem. I will be honest and say that I did later find the original poem, and comparing the two, I thought that the 13-line poem was just a little bit better than the 14-line sonnet, although that was okay too. So I decided to keep it as a 13-line poem, and since that time the 14-line version has completely disappeared anyway, so I wouldn't even be able to reconstruct that now. So, yeah, so it has an octave, which is actually 7 lines in this case, which talks about a situation, and it gives an image of the destruction of Troy, and someone thinking about this while sailing through the Cyclades, the Greek islands in the Aegean Sea. And then there is the sestet, which kind of develops that and asks a question about men's or artists, the artistic fascination with certain women. Right, so if we look at the structure, it's obviously iambic pentameter mostly, because that's what sonnets are. And the rhyming scheme is more typical of the Petrarchan sonnet, the Italian sonnet, than the Shakespearean or English sonnet. So travelling through the sonnet Cyclades, I thought about romances from the past. That's A, B, of mighty Ulysses strapped to the mast. A, B, B, of siren lovers Priam on his knees. A, B, B, A, cursing Paris for that strange and vast. B, emotion men call love. One only sees. A, that certain things were sure from first to last. B, so it's all 2 rhymes, just A and B. The whole 7 lines, and when it was 8 lines, as it should be for a sonnet, it was still only A and B. So the whole thing is very closely connected through these 2 rhymes. So it's A, B, B, A, B, A, B, and there is obviously a kind of mini conclusion in the last line that says certain things were sure from first to last. So questioning what love is, and thinking about it in terms of the Trojan myth or story, and coming to the conclusion that it's difficult to define love, but one only sees that certain things were sure from first to last. So perhaps let's look at those 7 lines in a bit more detail. Travelling through the sunlit Cyclades. Right, so it starts in media res, in the middle of something that's happening. Whoever is writing it, well, me in this case, is sailing through the Cyclades. And in fact, I really was. When I wrote it, I was trying to write it. I didn't completely finish it while I was sailing through the Cyclades, but I was sailing through the Cyclades when I was struggling with the poem. I thought about romances from the past, so I'm in the ideal place really to start thinking about the Greek past and Greek stories from the past. And I refer to Ulysses, of mighty Ulysses strapped to the mast, a great image in Western art. The picture of Ulysses strapped to the mast, passing the island of the Sirens, his men with ears stopped up, and with wax cannot hear the beautiful songs of the Sirens, and Ulysses is desperate to rush to his own destruction because of the beauty of the song, but he has prepared well, and now he can hear the song and also be saved from destruction too. He doesn't need to, because he's strapped to the mast, he cannot rush to his own death. It's a great image for someone who is rushing to his own destruction, cannot see the foolishness of what he is doing, has become blinded by love. And then I continue with the image of the destruction of Troy. Priam on his knees, cursing Paris for that strange and vast emotion men call love. Of course, Paris had stolen Helen from the Greeks, from Menelaus, brought her to Troy. So I am just imagining that perhaps when, as Troy was destroyed, maybe Priam on his knees might have been cursing his son Paris for bringing Helen to Troy, as that had led to his own destruction and that of the city and everybody in it. So, cursing Paris for that strange, yet vast and vast. So it's strange and vast. How can you ignore? How can you get beyond an emotion that is so strange and vast as love? One only sees that certain things were sure from first to last. We just know that Paris had to take Helen and Troy had to be destroyed. We just know that Ulysses had to be strapped to the mast so he could hear the songs of the Sirens. Certain things with love are inevitable. There is nothing logical about it, and we can see that often a love affair is going to end in destruction, and yet there is nothing we can do about it. And so the sestet continues that idea, and again this is more like an Italian sonnet than an English sonnet. So what is it in a single woman's eyes, or nose, or mouth, or lips, or snow-white breast, that make men lose their reason and at once begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs that put love to the test until the world itself has no defense? So the rhyme scheme there is, it's, if we say the octave has A and B, then it's C, D, E, C, D, E, which is a kind of fairly common rhyme for an Italian type sonnet, the sestet of an Italian type sonnet. The rhymes are not very closely related, and we get the idea. We can certainly hear the rhymes, and yet they're a little bit delayed, and they are not really in our face. So it's contemplative, it's considering the octave, what's been said in the octave about love being a tremendous passion that we cannot deny and we just have to follow, even if we know it's leading to our destruction. And it's like a contemplation on that. So asking questions, what is it in a single woman's eyes, or nose, or mouth, or lips, or snow-white breast, that make men lose their reason, and at once begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs that put love to the test, until the world itself has no defense. So, yeah, what is it in this? What is it about a single woman that obsesses someone? What was it about Helen that obsessed Paris? What was it about the sirens that obsessed Ulysses? Um, what is it in a single woman's eyes, or nose, or mouth, or lips, or snow-white breast that make men lose their reason? Well, the sonnet is basically a Renaissance invention. Or so in the English Renaissance, of course, there were very few black women around, and so, in fact, right up until Victorian times in England, very fair skin was seen as a great sign of beauty, and that's why it says, or nose, or mouth, or lips, or snow-white breast. It talks about a snow-white breast, kind of in the context of the poem. It's talking about Ulysses, about Greek myths, about Paris and Helen, and these were white societies, and the place where the sonnet developed was in Italy, which was another white society, and in Renaissance England, another white society. So I just want to emphasize that, I'm not suggesting that there is anything particularly great about a snow-white breast. It's just that in the context of the poem and the time, that's what would have been considered the height of beauty for a Greek, which is a white. Greece is a white society. Ancient Greece was a white society, and also in Renaissance Italy and Renaissance England. So I'm just following the ideas of beauty from that time, and it's not my own idea about a snow white breast being particularly beautiful. I just want to clear that up, because I wouldn't like anyone to get the wrong idea about it. That make men lose their reason, and at once begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs. So first of all, love makes men lose their reason, but after a while it gives them a kind of crazy ability, a crazy insight, crazy sense of daring, so that they're ready to risk anything and do anything with great strength and determination in order to get what they want. So you should really begin to fear somebody who is motivated by real love, because they will do anything and get beyond anyone or anything that stands in their way, like Paris with Helen. And there are many examples of the same kind of thing throughout history. So beware of somebody who is really in love and cannot easily get what he wants, because he will be motivated to do all sorts of crazy things, and because of the strength of passion, determination, he might actually even succeed. Begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs that put love to the test. Yeah, the one who loves sees the difficulties of acquiring what he wants as a kind of test, and the more difficult it is, the more he will put his heart and soul into it, and he will not fear death. So yeah, he is such a person is someone to be frightened of. Such men are dangerous. So love makes men lose their reason, and at once begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs that put love to the test until the world itself has no defense. So yeah, these people who love so much, they see difficulties as, or obstacles as a something that can, things that can prove how much they love the person. So they're dangerous, nothing frightens them, they will do anything, and eventually the world itself has no defense against what they do. Like the Greeks and the Trojans had no defense against what Paris did. He just took Helen, and it meant that all the Greeks were going to come to Troy, and that would make a big difference in their lives, and it meant the end of Troy. But anyway, he probably would have done it anyway because he was obsessed, and he could not do anything else. And yeah, so he is a dangerous man from this point of view. It's obviously a big image, a big metaphor, and it's talking about something that was like that in my own life at the time. I don't think I need to go into details about that. It's long over and long in the past. But it kind of inspired me to write this particular poem. So I'll finish by just reading it one more time. Travelling through the sunlit Cyclades, I thought about romances from the past, of mighty Ulysses strapped to the mast, of siren lovers, Priam on his knees, cursing Paris for that strange and vast emotion men call love. One only sees that certain things were sure from first to last. What is it in a single woman's eyes, or nose, or mouth, or lips, or snow-white breast, that make men lose their reason and at once begin to slowly plot and to devise schemes and affairs that put love to the test until the world itself has no defense?